So today we have with us the curator of this show, Consent, Lindsay G., who's going to be moderating our talk today with Dan Riley, Madison Young, Sarah Forbes, and Cindy Gallup. We have two more participants coming, Cinnamon Love and Tina Horn. So they're just going to join us when they get in, so stay tuned for that as well. I'm going to pass it off to you. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. So a little bit about the idea behind this panel. I attended a panel discussion in Las Vegas in January during the AVN convention that was held by Smitten Kitten, which if you don't know, it's a fantastic website. You should go, they have everything. And this was the topic of the conversation. Is pornography education? Is it entertainment? Is it something in between? How do we deal with this? And I just thought that was such an important topic that needs to be discussed. And the panel discussion itself was amazing. So I wanted to bring that conversation to a different city with different panelists and open it up and get more people thinking about it and talking about it. So what I want to do is just go down the line. If everybody can give a short introduction of themselves so everyone knows what your background is, that would be fantastic. If you don't want to, I can try, but I might mess it up.
I don't want to, Chad. I'm Dan Riley, and I worked in porn and, like what could be considered mainstream porn for about 3 or 4 years as a producer and screenwriter.
My name is Madison Young, and I am a sex-positive Tasmanian devil. I'm a sex educator, feminist pornographer, and also a kinky BDSM porn star. Been working in the adult industry for the past decade, and I run a nonprofit arts organization based out of San Francisco.
My name is Sarah Forbes. I am the curator for the Museum of Sex. I've been there for the last 8 years, trying to bring as many educational exhibitions to the population as possible. My background is in anthropology, and that's kind of how I fell upon this world of sex. And I'm interested in where this conversation takes us today.
I'm Cindy Gallup. I date younger men, particularly men in their 20s. And dating younger men, I encountered very directly and personally the real ramifications of the ubiquity and ease of access to porn online in our society today. So I launched 3 years ago a website at makelovenotporn.com that posts the myths of hardcore porn and balances them with the reality. So the construct is porn world, real world. This is what happens in the porn world, this is what actually happens in the real world. And it's very important to emphasize that Make Love Not Porn is not anti-porn. I'm entirely pro-porn, I watch porn myself. The issue I am tackling is not porn. The issue I am tackling is the complete lack in our society of an open, healthy dialogue around sex and porn, which would then enable people to bring a real-world mindset to the viewing of what is essentially artificial entertainment. So if you boiled my entire message of Make Love Not Porn down to one thing, you purely and simply talk about it. So I'm delighted that is what we're doing today.
Awesome. Okay, well, I think the best way to get into it is just to directly ask the question that's on my mind, which is not necessarily what should porn be or what is porn in the minds of people who make it or who view it, but really if it comes down to a solid objective look at the question, is porn education or is it entertainment in our society today? What do you think the answer is? And I'm going to hand this one off to Cindy because she was kind of going for it anyway.
Well, I guess, and I kind of touched on this just now. I mean, the issue in a way is not porn. Obviously, what we do have is a situation where porn is now more freely, easily, and widely available via the internet than it ever has been before. We do therefore have kids accessing it at earlier and earlier ages than ever before. A couple of years ago, an internet service provider survey showed that the average age at which kids first view hardcore porn online is 11. This year it's deemed to have dropped to 8. My personal experiences actually bear out that can indeed be the case. And by the way, it's important to say too that this isn't because kids are going looking for porn. It's about what gets shown on somebody's cell phone when you go around your friend's house. It doesn't matter what parents do, this happens. And so we do have a generation growing up that believes that what you see in hardcore porn is the way that you have sex, but that's exacerbated because we all have sex, but nobody talks about it in polite company and openly, generally. So parents are usually way too embarrassed to actually teach your children about sex. Schools and colleges run into massive issues as they try and make up that educational gap. And so by default, porn has become standalone sex education in a way that it was never intended to, and in a way that the industry certainly doesn't intend. So, I'm obviously, with what I'm doing with Make Love Not Porn, trying to sort of combat that where I can. But that's my observation. The issue really is not porn. The issue is the way we are as a society in the world around sex.
Regarding if porn is educational or entertainment, I think that an important thing to realize is that porn is like saying film or photography. Is photography educational? Is it entertainment? Is it art? Porn is a really vast medium, and I think that porn can be educational. There are educational porns. I have directed some of them. There are porn pieces that are completely not art. There is porn that is misogynistic. There is porn that is feminist. There is porn that is complete fantasy and narrative. A type of porn that I really enjoy doing is documentary porn. I document a lot of my real life sexuality and sex life, and my real life and how my sexual desires play into that. When I direct a film, I take a lot of time to really talk with the performers about what their real life fantasies are. I document a lot of real life couples and take a lot of care to construct what their fantasy might be or where they're really comfortable having sex, whether that's in their apartment or their home, or if they have a fantasy about having sex on a boat or want to go dumpster diving and then fuck behind a dumpster, whatever it is. I listen to them, I respect their desires, I don't judge them, and instead I facilitate the best possible experience I can for them to have the most authentic possible pleasure and orgasms on film. I think that showing honest communication, not hiding things, and really showing those elements can be educational. And so I don't think that all porn is educational, but I think that porn as a medium can be educational.
I'd say, because I'm coming from a little bit of a different perspective, different voice, the way the museum has dealt with porn is that we are using it as an artifact. We're telling a story behind it. As a particular institution, we don't have a take on is pornography good, is pornography bad. These are artifacts of our social history. These are artifacts of society. So we have an exhibition, it's called Action, Sex in the Moving Image, which is basically a film sampler, has over 200 films. Some of it is mainstream film, some of it is pornography, some of it is things that have been deemed pornography at a particular period in time, but we'd look back at it now and never put it under that heading. And at the bottom of each film, we have scrolling text explaining why this film is important, why it is significant, why and how it's a part of our history. And so, some of it's a little bit of a question of time. Maybe, 100 years ago, 100 years from now, we'll look at some film now that we think is just entertainment porn, some film that we think is just educational porn, and our perspective will shift. I think that there is a little bit of that time, space, context, which I think is really critical in understanding, and the intentionality of the person that made it.
Yeah, I think, like for instance, the way that the work that I've done has differed from, for instance, the work that you've done is you set out a lot of the time to make movies from the perspective of trying to do something that's educational, where the kind of porn that I made and the sector of the industry that I worked in, we were Send them love, everybody. We were doing something that was, well, I guess we always had commerce in mind, which is, I think, the thing that that keeps porn going and kind of holds it back in a lot of ways. And a lot of the, I mean, personally, the role that I played and the work that I did, a lot of the time, I would consider the things that I was doing as art. And I was trying to do that a lot of the time. But I think the dilemma that we came across in doing the kinds of things that we were doing is that you kind of have to assume this middle ground where you're doing something that's so plain and so trying to please everybody that you end up kind of pleasing nobody, and you make something that's really bland and uninteresting as a result of that. And I think that's just kind of, it's what most people are exposed to. And I think that's the kind of, I mean, not all of it, but I think a lot of that is the kind of problem porn that like Cindy is talking about, for instance.
I feel like that's why it's important to follow your own desire. I tell someone, don't make a foot fetish film if you don't have a foot fetish. You know, personally, I'm kinky, and it was always so disturbing for me to try to do a BDSM film in LA with people who had no idea what BDSM even stood for. They didn't know how to tie a knot. You know, I was like, okay, well, let me lead a workshop right now, and here you go, here's some basics, this is what a safe word is, this is what we'll be using, and having to have those kind of conversations, and even as a performer, having to kind of come in and be like, all right, well, I'm going to at least have control of, I'm going to assert myself in this position, at least for my own safety.
I think that actually, Dan, what you just said about being part of sort of the mainstream porn industry, making things that end up being a little bland, there's a point in there that I find really intriguing.
It's not all bad.
No, it's not words. For instance, the films at Madison that you make are small, you know, generally more artistic, don't have the same kind of reach as a lot of the films that Dan has worked on, which are porn parodies made by much bigger companies with huge budgets, relatively speaking. And I find that, you know, if I go online and I go to Google and I search for some sort of sex porn term, the kinds of things that I find for free, pirated online, are much more often the types of movies that Dan was working on than the type of material that's being made by smaller production companies.
But I think something to keep in mind as well, like Tristan Taormino is working for Vivid, I'm directing for Girlfriends Films, which is a very large mainstream girl trying to turn more queer company. I think that mainstream companies are working more now with directors that do have, that are more sex positive. And there are definitely sex positive folks within the mainstream industry as well that have had an impact on
But
it.
actually, if I can pick up on Lindsay's point, because I think what is interesting is, in every other part of our lives, we have curators that we can draw on to actually lead us to the things we really like. So, but porn is because it is, you know, this underworld, because it's a parallel universe, we never talk about it openly. We don't have the sort of publicly curated routes that would actually get people to the kind of porn that they would love to, like yours, for example, Madison. We don't have the Pinterests, and you know, I mean, you just don't have people curating the kind of stuff we go, oh my God, I've discovered, it's fantastic, in the same very open way, which is a huge shame.
I think that, like, where I direct people when they are looking for that body of work is look up the Feminist Porn Awards.
Yes.
Great curation of feminist and sex positive porn right there on an annual basis that has some amazing directors, both in mainstream and more independent. Also, there are sex-positive shops that are popping up everywhere that have a really wonderful array of porn that is hand-selected and has to meet certain qualifiers, such as Good Vibrations, which is available online, and Smitten Kitten, which you mentioned as well, which has films available online, is a constant.
Oh, yeah, except the 15-year-old girl in Minnesota is not going to find that.
I think that's the bigger issue is piracy, and which Lindsay had brought up, which really is the biggest issue, is that we have an entire generation of consumers whose first exposure to porn is pirated material online, and unfortunately the adult industry delayed in going after the companies, the tube sites, and even the end users for pirating material, so that now we've created an entire generation who feel entitled to free porn. So the material that they do have access to readily available when they type in keywords into search engines tends to be a very limited focus group of material that's been produced. And it does make it a lot harder unless someone specifically is looking for, feminist porn, sex positive porn. Unless they pop in those keywords, they're not getting the access. Which I think what has to happen is producers of those types of material have to become more marketing savvy and have to become more, more savvy in the types of keywords they're using to be able to make sure that their porn gets access. I mean, we have to not be so brainy with the material we're producing that we forget that it's still porn and people still want to jerk off to it. So if the producers of sex positive and feminist porn are more diligent about making sure that their product gains commercial access outside of sex positive stores and outside of the sex positive framework online, then they can reach more people and we can start to really see more material produced. Because unfortunately, traditionally, porn has always been produced by white men for white men. And so even as both a performer and a producer, I find that it's only been in the last 10 years that women and men and women of color are being in the forefront of directing and producing porn, and it's always been treated as a niche market. So that it's like, oh well, we want to produce movies of girls with big butts for guys that like girls with big butts, so we're going to hire a Latin director or a black director to produce those things. But they're not. It's still treated as a niche market. So the people that are producing in the niche markets have to become more aware of how they're marketing and how they're doing their search engine optimizations and all of that, so that material can reach a larger audience.
So just gonna say, it's kind of tying in both those things. It's really an entry point. Let's take where I am at the Museum of Sex. You have people coming to the museum who have no formal education in sexuality. They're going to have no idea what sex positive means. They're going to have no idea what feminist pornography means.
They don't even know it exists.
They don't know. They don't even know this is a category that's a possibility to interact with. And I think if you step back, and I think this is a little bit about some of your project, is you have so many people that porn, that was the word that was difficult to put into the Google search.
Right.
So you're just starting from place one. So in creating content, for us, we have to balance that. We have a patronage group that is so vast. We have somebody who just turned 18. They think they're doing something really scandalous. They're coming to the Museum of Sex. Who knows what they're going to see? They've had no education on how to behave in this kind of museum, what kind of content they're going to interact with. And then you have somebody who maybe is somebody on this panel that is so knowledgeable, so aware, can tell you the intricacies in and out. And we need to create an experience for both of those individuals.
Right.
And I think even just if starting at point one, what is this porn industry about? What is even possible? How do I learn to even talk? I think you were saying the words. Where is that starting point in the education to get to a larger place?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think if we don't have that shame to begin with, and are able to have those conversations at an earlier place. If we can have those kind of conversations at an earlier point in our lives, like you were saying, I think that can really help to change that. In other areas of our lives, we make sure that, like, we want to know where our coffee came from. We want to know what the ethics are behind the food that we're eating or around the clothes that we're wearing. It should be the same way for the porn that we're consuming, the media that we're consuming. And I think that searching online for just free porn that we're consuming often happens in a shame-based way, and that you know, if you're not paying for your porn, you're going to get what you're not paying for. Just like if you go to McDonald's and pay 99 cents for a burger, you're going to get what you're paying for. It's fast food porn that you're consuming versus consuming porn where you know the ethics and values and mission behind the company.
And see, I think that even with that, it's a bigger, there's a bigger issue is that most consumers don't care, because they don't view porn as a legitimate industry. They don't view porn performers as they don't view the people that do porn as people that are contributing members of society, so they really don't give a shit. You know what I mean? It's you know, most people, they view sex workers in general in such a negative light that they don't see us as they don't see it as a business. So when you have people that are, you know, growing up in, you know, a celebrity sex tape culture where they feel entitled to free porn because they never had to like sneak their grandfather's magazine, they never had to sneak their uncle's porn tape, they never had to walk into a store to buy porn in order to get more. Now you have an entire culture that feels that, you know, this is not an industry that is worth me putting my money into. So while I'm not for government regulation where porn is concerned, because I feel like I feel like you can't govern someone's sexuality, and it is in a way that's going to be beneficial for the industry in general. I do think that now that the industry is starting to go after end users for piracy, they're starting to go after the tube sites, and it's happening in conjunction with the mainstream film and television industry also going after end users for piracy. I think that it will give the porn industry a little more legitimacy and bring us kind of out of the dark, where people will be like, oh, if I download this porn for free, I could get charged, you know, I could get sued for millions of dollars. Now people have a sense of, oh, I should probably pay for that. Like, these people actually do have to, you know, these people do earn a living. But it's a bigger picture of changing people's views on the people that perform in videos in order to get them to see it as a viable source of income and a viable industry that deserves their money.
Yeah, I love the fact that you brought up how people used to access pornography. I mean, that has changed so tremendously. The availability that you can, in your own, you know, private space, on your phone, on your laptop, whatever it may be. You know, back to, I'm always going to pull it back to, you know, this idea of a museum. You know, we deal with lots of sex collectors, and it's like, oh, they find these amazing treasure troves of, you know, maybe it's, you know, grandpa passed away sadly, and they're cleaning out the house, and they find the stash of porn in the closet. For us, yeah, it's very hard for your grandchild to deal with.
Unreal to real, and
it's amazing. I mean, this is the history of sex that's being preserved in these closets. I mean, these are the things that get, you know, this is how we tell our story of the past.
Lindsay, if I get hit by a bus, I'll tell you where all my porn is.
No, you'll let me know.
John, you want to say something on Instagram?
But yeah, I was going to say that I think, because we talk about the problems with porn piracy, but that I think is, it's kind of putting the blame on the people that are downloading porn for free, where the way that I always saw it, and the way that, I mean, I got out because I saw no end to this problem, and I couldn't make money anymore, which is why I stopped making porn. But the big problem as I see it is that it's not that people are downloading porn for free in illegal ways. It's that companies like Brazzers, they own all these tube sites. So they make it so that you don't have to ever pay for porn, because you can log on to a tube site and instantly just get your fix and jerk off and you're done with it. And you don't have to talk about it, you don't have to close a closet, you don't have to, you don't have to hide things, you don't have to think about it anymore besides. And they designed it that way because I guess they make more from ad revenue than you can make from actually getting people to pay for content.
Well, and Brazzers is a whole nother issue because I know tons of people that won't even shoot for Brazzers anymore because they are, to me, a prime example of an unethical company that kind of does things in an ethical manner. They pay their talent well. They provide all of the trappings of a good day at work, but then they will go and register a performer's name as a URL, and they will steal the entire front page of a blog, of the performer's legitimate blog, and have, like, let's say, cinnamonlovesblog.com, and have the entire front page of my real blog, and then redirect it to my scenes for their company.
Right.
So it's companies like that make it very difficult for performers to continue to do business. I mean, the turnover rate of performers in the business is so high because of the unethical way that people do business in the industry. And because of that high turnover rate, you have the legitimacy of the business is decreased in the public eye. They don't see performers as a necessary part of the industry because it's like you have a new girl every 6 months or every 30 days. So when you have that sort of thing happening that makes it difficult for people to make money and then they have to leave, now it trickles back down to the consumer. But I mean, I perform less, but I didn't leave the business completely because I feel like there is hope in turning around the piracy issue. The industry has to create a new delivery system. We're going through the exact same thing that the music industry went through in the early 90s with Napster. The music industry had to figure out a way to create a new delivery system to make people buy music. And now the music industry has started to recover. They haven't seen the high profits that they were seeing in the 80s and 90s, but they're starting to recover. So we're going to have to do the same thing, and we're starting to do it. Like, you have your clip stores, we have to create a new business model. We cannot continue to only depend on stores. Stores are great for the, it's the same thing with the magazine industry. The magazine industry started dying. Nobody's going to magazine stands and buying magazines. So what did they do? They had to start creating the online magazine to compete with other types of websites. The news sites have had to start utilizing social media. They've had to start creating other forms of delivery in order to get people involved and get people wanting to use their product and spending their money. And that's what we have to do.
Yeah, porn needs to find its iTunes.
Exactly. And we have that. We have that to some degree. Unfortunately, it primarily works only with fetish and niche-based products. We have it in the clipsforsale.com and the clipvia.com and those types of formats. It is an iTunes business model, but because of the overabundance of free, you cannot compete with free. So unfortunately, the industry has to start going after the tube sites. They have to start going after the end users. They have to start letting people know, we will sue you if you do not, and take everything you have if you don't pay. Because we have people that have to eat. It's not just the performers and directors, and it's the grips and the makeup artists and everybody else. And people have to understand that porn is a viable industry just like any other industry, and we will sue you for stealing from us.
Actually, can I jump in on that? Because, by the way, bloody love everything you're saying. I'm going to take issue with one part of it, which is that actually going after piracy is not the way to go, and we've seen how much that has not worked for the music industry. I find all this fascinating because I alongside my startups as an entrepreneur, I work as a consultant to pay the mortgage, and porn is like every other industry that I study as a business person. It's gotten so big, it's gotten conventional. So porn now has norms and rules and conventions.
Yeah.
It has totally fallen prey to that syndrome of collaborative competition, which is where everybody in a sector competes with everybody else in the sector by doing exactly the same thing everybody else in the sector is doing.
Absolutely.
Its old world order business model has been destroyed, as you say,
It's
it's
a brick-and-mortar
tanking.
business model.
And every single dynamic that I've just cited is true of music, broadcasting, publishing, movies, and advertising.
Right.
And in that scenario, actually a guy wrote a great piece in the Harvard Business Review last year where he talked about the fact that industry sectors that are caught in this trap, Clay Shirky actually put it very well. He said, institutions have a vested interest in perpetuating the problems to which they are the solution, and every industry sector is caught in that old world order stranglehold. And he said, it was a piece about the fact that in that scenario, the real disruptors and the real innovators come in from the outside, not from within.
Right.
And he ended his piece with a great quote where he said, if your strategies are simply aligned with what everybody else in the marketplace is doing, a single business bullet will take you all down.
Right.
And
that's exactly what's happening.
It's exactly the situation. But actually the opportunity is, and again this is true of every sector, broadcast and publishing, the opportunity is for disruption and innovation by individual creative vision. Mm-hmm. By people who see the future. One of my favourite quotes of all time, Alan Kay, who said, in order to predict the future, you have to invent it. The opportunity exists brilliantly in porn to invent the future. To actually have people with a new vision of what they would like to see the industry be, what they would like the new business model to be, and to absolutely disrupt accordingly. The opportunity is wide open in that respect.
It's the only problem with that I foresee, or that I see on a continuous basis, is that because everything right now is internet-based, and our technology has caught up to the point where it's very easy to steal from companies. So, a company can, if I have a website and I upload content to my back end, before I even launch it and make it available on the site itself, someone has stolen it and it's on a tube site. So the technology has made it, easier to steal from companies. What's happening now is that more and more companies are starting to go live, which I find to be hilarious because back in '98 back in '99 I owned a webcam company, and we failed. My business model failed because the technology had not made it possible to be able to stream fast enough. So everything was very choppy and it did very poorly, and I was paying a shitload of money to girls to come in and sit for $50 an hour and masturbate, and people were seeing it in 30-second increments. So, which if you can imagine, the dildo's here and then the dildo would come out. And there was no continuity whatsoever. And then as the technology began to catch up with what we were doing, more and more people you started to see more like, girls in Iowa doing webcam, and no porn stars were doing webcam. And now, all the porn stars are doing webcam, because you can't steal live. You can't steal what's happening right this minute. You can capture it and then put it up someplace, but you can't steal live. And I said years ago that companies needed to utilize their websites in a more comprehensive manner and not just use it to sell videos and sell DVDs, but to show live behind the scenes on sets and to run their shoots live. And now, 10 years later, we've got companies doing exactly that, because it's the one place where they can't be pirated, and people, which makes it so much easier, if people aren't stealing your product before it gets out there, and you're spending, $20,000, $30,000 to produce a movie, and now your entire movie is up on some tube site. It's a way for them to continue to make money. And because performers are now becoming their own producers when it comes down to live products, they are able to cast themselves with people that they might not normally be cast with. So, someone may not ever hire me to work with Madison Young, but I could say, hey, let's go let's have a girl scene on my site, on Streamate today. And, we can book ourselves to work together and do something that we want to do that no one else would ever ask us to do.
I actually want to jump in here, because I want to make sure that we bring the conversation back to the idea of, is this educating people? And one thing that you had spoken about before was the idea that the consumer may not value porn performers and sex workers in general, I think if we open it up, as contributing members of society. Do you think that the webcam model is a good way for performers to actually have more of a one-on-one experience and maybe do some sort of educating?
No, I think that social media is a way for performers and directors, but performers specifically, to be able to be in direct communication with the consumer. Social media has allowed, I get people every day that that email me or tweet me or whatever, and they're like, I had no idea that you were this cool, or that you were into this thing, or that you were a great cook, or whatever, or you changed my idea of what a performer is, because all they see is what's on screen. So in their head, we're walking around in stilettos and lingerie all day in a house somewhere in Corn Valley, and but thanks to social media, they actually get to see that we're real people with real lives. I think personally that performers should have a workshop on social media and social networking and rebranding their image, because some of the things that I see that performers put out there, while it might be true to who they are not necessarily good for their image or for the business or for creating sex positive images of porn and porn performers. Amazon wish lists are great, actually. I get a lot of stuff from my Amazon wish, but no, but things like things like when I see people, there's certain things that I see, whether it's drug use or whether it's casual random sex, that I think may not necessarily present the most positive image of what a performer is. But when you do see a performer, I saw a performer post a picture of a plastic cup with what's called lean, with what is it?
Rosalind cough syrup?
Yeah, cough syrup and Sprite in her cup. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, is she really posting a picture of drugs on her? Pot, I don't care, because most porn performers are in LA and it's all legal and what have you. But I'm like, is she really just posting a picture of cough syrup and Sprite on her fucking Twitter? She might as well post a line of fucking Coke. That's not the image that you want to present when you are trying to sell a business. But I think that it's good to be able to share a part of yourself and a part of your life. And lots of performers are post pictures of their families, and they're at softball practice with their kid, and or what the food that they cook, or concerts that they're going to, and it makes you real to the consumer. That you're no longer just the girl or the guy that's in the video that's a very two-dimensional image, that they have no idea that you're a real human being. So I think that the social media has become an essential part of of changing that image.
I think you are making a really interesting point, which I'm going to try to work into a question I want to ask. It might take me a few minutes. I think the larger question here then is, as Cindy said before, as she said in an interview actually that I did for this show, the conversation that parents need to have with their kids about sex in light of what they can find on the internet is the kind of conversation that no parent is ever going to have with their kids.
Except for me.
There
you go.
And Cinnamon and I, during our interview, talked about the lack of really honest, open sex education that happens in the schools.
Right.
So then, does the responsibility for educating young people and older people also about the realities of pornography and sex fall to pornographers? Is that fair?
Absolutely
No,
not.
no,
Absolutely
not at all.
No,
Not at all.
That's ridiculous.
No. I think I just read
Well, you might have on that one.
Yeah, I just read an article on either Clutch or Jezebel, or I don't know, I can't remember where I read it, yesterday or the day before, and they were talking about should sex ed in schools teach good sex in terms of what consent is, not just that no means no, but being certain that the person that you're with is saying yes. Are they capable of giving consent? Is someone that's passed out drunk at a party able to say yes to you? Understanding, understanding signals, in terms of what is an affirmative, what is, what feels good, saying, yes, that feels good, can I have more? And giving teenagers a dialogue to be able to express desire and pleasure. And this article was great because it was all about should they be teaching good sex in addition to just sex in general in schools. And I think that the answer is yes, because they're barely getting sex ed as it is, barely. But I think that it's not our job, it's not my job. I'm here, when I get people that tell me, oh, I've been watching you since I was 10, it creeps me out that some 10-year-old was watching me in porn. And my first question is like, where were your parents? How did you see that? That's not my job.
So actually, I am trying from a completely different perspective to do something about this, in the sense that when I launched makeloveNotPorn.com 3 years ago, it was very much a sideline. I did it on no money. It's a very basic, clunky, minimal website. I had the opportunity to launch it with a talk at TED, and the response has been extraordinary ever since, despite the fact I've had no money, time, resources, funds to spend on it. MakeLoveNotPorn.com gets 3,000 unique visitors per day, a lot of them because they're looking for porn, so it's fantastic they find me. It gets traffic from 180 countries, it's global, but most poignantly, I get emails to my Make Love Not Porn inbox literally every single day about it. And I get them from young and old, male and female, straight and gay, from every country in the world. And even before the content I put out there, what blows people away is simply the fact that I stood on stage in public and I talked about and I'm doing something about what everybody knows and nobody ever speaks about. And as a result, people feel able to tell me anything. They pour their hearts out to me on email, they tell me things about their sex lives and their porn watching habits they've never told anyone else before. And I increasingly felt this great personal responsibility to take Make Love Not Porn forwards in a way that will make it much more far-reaching, helpful and effective. So I'm doing that, and as I said earlier, my entire message of Make Love Not Porn is really to get people to talk about everything we're talking about today, and have this conversation. So what I'm planning to do with the next iteration of Make Love Not Porn is I'm taking every single dynamic that exists out there in social media currently and applying them to the one area that no social media network or platform has ever gone or will ever dare go, which is sex. So what I would like to do to help the situation is I would like to socialize sex. I'm out to make real-world sex socially acceptable and therefore socially shareable in a way that, to be frank, nobody else has ever achieved to date, so I'd like a really big goal. And I would like to try and do, with Make Love Not Porn in the 21st century, what actually Hugh Hefner managed with Playboy in the 20th, which is bring sex out into the open, legitimize it, create a public platform for public discussion in the public domain. As part of that, I really want what I'm doing to actually help the porn industry. I would like to help redefine what constitutes porn, and I would like what I'm doing to be part of showing a new future for porn. My team and I are building what we'll be launching as MakeLoveNotPorn.tv at the end of June. So watch this space. You can go to MakeLoveNotPorn.tv and sign up now. I'm afraid I'm not going to tell you exactly what we are doing because we are operating in stealth mode. And we're only doing that. That's not because I believe in that. I totally believe the more you share on it, the better it gets. Except, as everybody here knows all too well, when it comes to sex, which more than any other area I work in as a business person proves the truth that saying, we do not see things as they are, we see things as we are. Everybody processes me and what I'm doing with Make Love Not Porn through the lens of their own personal bias, prejudice, fear, insecurity. I take vilification and abuse in the blogosphere every single day because of Make Love Not Porn. So it's hard enough building what I and my team are building to release it in June without being shut on from a great high ball building it. So I just don't need all the aggro misunderstanding that would come from people knowing exactly what I'm doing. But I really hope that when I go live with it, it will help all of these guys and all of us to really open up everything we're talking about today in a way that benefits everybody, makes everyone a lot happier.
I'm going to take this opportunity to have Cinnamon and Tina both introduce themselves because we didn't get to do introductions.
Go for it, because you just got here.
Hi, I'm Tina Horn. I just came from grad school. I'm not a total diva. Well, That's not the reason I'm late. Anyway, I'm a pornographer. I perform in porn. In fact, Madison, young
I
gave
shot
me.
her very first scene.
It's true. She gave me my start. She believed in me
We
when
went
I
to
was
a
a
cafe
nobody.
and I asked you, and you told me, I've always wanted to have a DP, and I was like, oh, this is great.
So Madison hooked me up with a DP for my first porn scene. I've been doing professional BDSM for over 5 years, which means I'm a dominatrix. But I do lots of. I love the word dominatrix, but it's only a small part of the kind of client-based sex work that I do. 2 years ago, I launched my own website, which is called Queer Porn TV. It's queerporntv.com or queerporn.tv, which I just got back from Toronto, where we actually won our second Feminist Porn Award. So, that site is, for me, is really a documentary of transgressive sexuality. Monetized by lots of really nasty, hardcore fucking.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm a writer and a sex educator, and I'm so happy to be here with this amazing panel of people.
Yay. I too wasn't trying to be a diva. I was having phone problems and was on the phone with the phone company for 2 hours today. Which made me late. But I've been in the business for 19 years. I just celebrated my 19th year in February. As a performer and director, I too am a dominatrix. But I'm also a radio host. I host a show called Sex, Love, and Hip Hop on dtfradio.com every Thursday night, which is really awesome because I get to merge a bunch of stuff that I love, which is sex education and really great hip hop music. And I've been a writer for several years. I'm a relationship columnist for at thewellversed.com. And I consider myself a Black feminist pornographer, and I'm a poet and a writer and a mom, and I'm a big advocate for comprehensive sex education, particularly for autism and Asperger's. I have an 18-year-old with Asperger's who I discovered last year that he had not had sex ed that was geared towards him with a developmental delay, which is a major issue. Like, you can't tell somebody that's 18 that identifies as 14 that you can't not tell them that having sex with someone under 18 is illegal. So I'm a big autism Asperger's advocate, and which April's Autism Awareness Month, by the way. And that's pretty much it. I just relocated here from LA. So I'm in Brooklyn right now. I'm really happy.
Okay, this just occurred to me. I'm not entirely sure if this fits into our conversation, but I happen to know that 4 out of the 6 people on this panel right now identify as feminists. And we had brought up earlier that there are people who don't know what feminist porn is. Dan, you're all for it. Can someone field the question, what is feminist porn, for anyone in the audience who might not know? Someone?
Oh man.
Madison, you were saying
Feminist porn, since I run the Feminist Porn Network at feministporn.net. Feminist porn is really humanist porn and sex-positive porn. Porn with sex-positive values, which may include some of the following, such as communication, valuing of authenticity, pleasure, connection, safer sex, diversity in ethnicity, body size, and really an emphasis on, for me, I feel an emphasis on pleasure and choice. A choice for the performer, for the crew. Everyone wants to be there and actually believes in what they are doing, or some of the qualities and values that I see in feminist porn. I feel like feminism has to do with choice. And as both a feminist porn performer, it's my choice to be there,
and I come in with my feminist porn performer toolbox. I am going, even though there is not space in which for me to communicate with this person that I don't know who they are going to be when they show up on set, because my agent hasn't told me, I show up and see them and pull them aside and say, hi, I'm Madison, and this is how I like to get off. And I plan on doing that today. And when they tell me, okay, so in a couple seconds you're going to fake an orgasm and then we're going to go to pop, I say, okay, give me 30 seconds and do this, and then I'll just orgasm instead. Yeah, so those are some of the tools as a performer that I bring in, heavily on communication, actually looking the person in the eyes and communicating with them about my pleasure and finding out what they enjoy as well. As a director, it's really about facilitating someone else's, the performer's pleasurable experience. So listening to them about what their desires are and being a good listener, really, and facilitating the best possible environment for that couple or individual to be intimate with me and the camera.
So I would say, I know I'm not the moderator, but I have a question based on all of that. Is what would you guys say the role of authenticity is in that interaction between education and entertainment?
I think it's a big factor. I mean, having been in the business for my entire adult life, because I started at 19, I always made a point of only doing things that I wanted to do, only having sex with people I wanted to have sex with, turning down opportunities regardless of the money, because if I felt that it wasn't something that I could genuinely give myself to. And trying things that, I made it about my own personal fantasies, my own personal interests. So, I think that that's one of the reasons why I've been in the business for 19 years and why other people last a year or two. That authenticity gives me an opportunity to share with people it's my real sexuality. It's not just who I am on camera, this is who I am for real. And that translates to the camera and that translates to the person watching. I get people that, I had, in the last couple of years, I discovered that I have a huge fan base in Africa because I was on the Tyra Banks show and they decided, and it was syndicated in their foreign syndication. They are all over Africa now, even though she's not the show's not in existence. But I started getting all these emails from guys in Africa that would tell me that they could feel me through the camera, that they could feel that the sex was real, that they could feel that I was having a real orgasm, and they could see it in my face. And it's interesting when you see people, there are girls that I know that are great fucking actresses. I found out recently that a girl that I've known for like 6 or 7 years has never had an orgasm in her life, and she's an award-winning porn star, and she's married, and I'm just like, what? You've never had an orgasm? I had no idea, but so there are those that are great actors that, but there are those that when you see that real, that genuine orgasm, that genuine feeling of pleasure, I think that people gain something from it.
So do you think the authenticity makes it educational, or do you think that changes which category, which bucket it falls
I think it does to some degree. I think that I said this at another panel that we were on in DC at Momenticom recently. Porn has become an educational tool because there is not comprehensive sex education. So while we can change what kids are taught now in schools to give them a heads up in terms of sex-positive education, we have their parents and their grandparents and their aunts and their uncles who have not had an appropriate sex education and are turning to porn to be able to teach them something. So we have to go back and re-educate adults outside of the bedroom, in order to be able to give them that key factor that they're missing. If I have a woman who has, all her life has grown up thinking that giving head was gross, then she's gonna learn how to give head from watching a porno flick with her boyfriend or her husband. Unfortunately, and that may be her first introduction before she finds out that there's even a workshop available that she can, go to learn how to do that. So I think that when there is that authenticity, I think that when you can see that it's someone that is enjoying themselves, that, because I like giving head, so when I do it on camera, it looks fun, and it looks pleasurable for me too, not just for the guy. So in turn, yeah, it becomes educational, unintentionally, but.
I don't know if it's a matter of education. I think it actually makes it more entertaining when, like, it's one of the many things I could never reconcile is that it's not, sometimes when there's, I guess, in the stuff that I did, it was just by luck, if it was like two people that know each other or whatever, but everything that we did was always just two people who were booked by, two separate agents or whatever, and they show up that day and they fuck each other. But there's a huge difference between, like, there's a line between, like, when you're filming people having sex and when you're filming people performing sex. And you really can see a difference. And I think even most porn consumers can see the difference in that and they respond to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I wanted to touch on the feminism question. I just happen to be a feminist that does porn. I never really identified as a feminist until the last few years, because I always kind of took for granted the fact that I was a feminist. And, I just wrote an article for the feminist porn book, which is it's an anthology that will be out at the end of this year that's curated by Constance Penley and Mireille Miller-Young and Tristan Taramino and Celine, I can't remember her last name, but I wrote this piece on a question of feminism because I was on a panel at a panel at a feminist media conference on porn, and someone asked me, one of the students asked me if I consider myself a feminist or my work to be feminist, and I had never considered that before because, I was born in 1973, so like Roe v. Wade was passed at the beginning of the year that I was born, women already have the right to vote, like there's, all these different issues, like major issues that had already been decided before I was even like thought of. So I just always took for granted that I had these inalienable rights to be able to do whatever the fuck I wanted to do. And it never crossed my mind that someone would question whether or not I could do what I wanted to with my body or with my sex. So, I've only recently started to really identify as a feminist, and I've identified as a pornographer for much longer because 19 years is a long time to do porn without considering yourself to be a pornographer. It's the only job I've had for 15 years. So I definitely consider myself a pornographer first and a feminist second. And I think my work speaks for itself. Like my work is decidedly feminist because I am a feminist. I refuse to do anything, like Madison, I refuse to do anything that I don't think is going to be, that goes against my own personal belief system. And I've been asked to do all kinds of things. I was asked to do a blow bang scene for this site called Cum Bang, which is like an interracial blow bang site. Which not that I have anything against blow bangs because I've done blow bangs and I think they're fun. But all of the guys was like all white men in Confederate flag T-shirts and Confederate flag socks, with a black female as the giving them head, and I was just kind of like, no, not interested in doing that. I know the money sounds great, but not interested in doing that. So it's my work speaks for itself. I refuse to do things that I think go against, my own beliefs that I think are degrading, regardless of whether the director is black or white or Hispanic or male or female. Like if someone wants me to do something that I think is degrading, I'm not going to do it.
I'd like to see how you feel about this, because the term interracial porn gets thrown around a lot.
And only applies to black men and white women.
Right.
Yeah.
It's black men and white women, and it tacitly just fetishizes racism.
Yes.
And I worked with Shane Diesel for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think he has a healthy attitude about the kind of stuff that he does, and he's a great guy, and a really smart guy.
And I think he fetishizes it as well.
Right, and he's conscious of the fact that he's, like, I don't know if they even put this in movies, but when we're shooting, he'll tell the girls to excuse me, but to call him a nigger.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's fun
Shane
to fans.
Diesel, for people that don't know who Shane Diesel is a black male performer, kind of fair complexion, bald head, really buff with a huge schlong. I worked with him in Rough Sex
Couldn't fit it in this,
too.
I don't think.
No, it's ginormous. And
It's often looks like a bell pepper.
I remember the scene that I shot with him and Richard Mann, who's also really big and also has a similar type of career. I shot a scene with him in Rough Sex 2 for Tristan Taormino, and it was shown at Cinekink, which was hilarious because, you know, on the big giant movie screen, when his dick came out like this, and the audience went, But Shane's entire career has been based on fetishizing the big black mandingo with the innocent little white girl, and his, you know, there were titles like, you know, like Daddy, there's a Negro in my whatever, like really bad. Oh my God, my sister's fucking a Negro. And but I think he fetishizes it in the same way that there are.
And it's so antiquated, and it's like,
Yeah.
like mainstream entertainment couldn't get away with something like that. Or even the,
Yeah.
Well, I think that goes back to what Cindy said.
So we have about 15 minutes, so if you want to ask more questions or take questions.
But I think that does go back a lot to what Cindy was saying before about how this is just something that doesn't get talked about.
Right.
You know, the issues that remain in porn that can't really remain anywhere else, maybe, or shouldn't remain anywhere else and largely don't, remain in porn because it's something that doesn't get spoken about.
Right.
But then also what you said, Cinnamon, you can't govern sexuality. You can't tell people what
I mean,
they
it's
love
really
and
hard.
fantasy.
I personally don't have a thing for race play, but there are other people that I know that do have a thing for race play. I mean, I did a panel, I did a workshop with Midori, with Fetish Diva Midori in San Francisco years ago at the Women's Center on a degradation play. And she had me like in a burlap bag in the back of her while she's speaking, and at one point she like pulls me out and has me like crawl down the middle of the aisle. There's like 200 women there, and she had me crawl down the middle of the aisle and, you know, go fetch a condom and bring it back. And there were, you know, and she's Eurasian, and there were black women that got up and left because they felt that it was too much for them to see a black woman being degraded by this Eurasian woman. And it was, you know, for me, it was just about sex. Now, and she talked about being, being a lesbian and, you know, Jewish, and being, you know, dressing up in a Nazi uniform with another Jewish woman and having, you know, BDSM lesbian play, and how Hitler would roll over in his grave if he knew that there were two Jewish lesbians dressed up in Nazi uniforms fucking each other, you know, and it made sense to me. I personally couldn't go that far, but for her, it worked. So it's like, you know, if Shane is okay with being called a nigger in a video, who am I to say that he's wrong? That's his particular kink. I personally would probably smack the shit out of somebody if they called me a nigger in a video. I won't even do that type of race play on my phone sex line when people email me and they're like, oh, would you be okay if I was to call you this? And I'm like, no, it doesn't work for me, sorry, you can call somebody else. So.
I wanted to say, as I'm white and Jewish and queer, so you know there are lots of the way that hegemony and structures and power intersect are very complicated. So not necessarily to comment on race play, but to comment on the whole BDSM and domination and submission and degradation and humiliation is a big part of my personal sexual fantasy life and reality life, professionally and personally, and also part of my work. And I really think with regards to porn, and with regards to Cindy's work and the idea of people being educated by the stories that they see in porn, I really think this is my big thing right now, is that it's all about context, and what's not happening is that people are being exposed to these fictional stories, which is what porn is, and seeing it as reality. And that I would like to see work being done by pornographers and hopefully by porn distributors, but also in these kinds of conversations to remind people that if it's fantasy, and that if people consent that if adults consent to a fantasy, that actually, my opinion is that these kinds of edgy kinds of plays can be actually extremely healthy and cathartic in an erotic context between consenting adults, and that people don't need to be people have these fantasies and they want what they can't have, and I think that a lot of repressed shame is what creates the issues more than those images themselves, and so that's.
And it's
the
showing
context.
the negotiation,
Mhm.
showing the negotiation
Right,
and the
absolutely.
communication that happens before that scene. And I think that can be super hot. Like communication can be super hot. And I think it's important to show that. That's why I'm so into doing the more documentary style of porn right now. Or at least having those like really in-depth interviews where we kind of get to know the fantasy and know like what these people are really into before following them on that journey. If we just appear in that fantasy, then that can be jarring, or we can take it out of context.
The gonzo style of porn is built on creating little mini scenarios that could possibly happen in reality. The pizza man shows up and the girl doesn't have money, so she fucks him in order to not pay for her pizza. So, it's like that whole gonzo style of porn it's the fantasy that we want to believe could possibly happen. The problem is that in this MTV generation that we have, people have such short attention spans that they forget that it's fantasy. And it doesn't just apply to porn, it applies to regular television and movies too. I mean, how often do you see, do you hear stories of an actor on some soap opera walking down the street, or on some dramedy walking down the street, and people like yelling at them because they were mean to this other character, or that they were, I read an article this morning about a guy who played a thief in a television show who got arrested because neighbors called the police and thought that he was really a thief, and he got arrested. So it's like people forget, and this is the reality of the world that we live in, that people have been so programmed with television that they forget that these things are not real. So we have to, and often, and I love the documentary style, like when we did Rough Sex 2, and we had a whole conversation about why it was important to me to be dominated by black men in a BDSM scene. Because it doesn't exist. And in all the BDSM porn I've shot, I had never been topped by a black man. So it was really important for me to show that dynamic in my movie. But most people, they fast forward through the dialogue.
Yeah, and actually, I'd like to speak briefly to what this really means, because I am my own research lab, in the sense that I'm very open about the fact that I date younger men casually and recreationally, so I date a lot of them. I refresh the pipeline regularly. The work I'm doing with Make Love Not Porn is not about me going, as the media do, I hear that young people today. It is me going, I fuck 22-year-olds, and I can tell you exactly what goes down, literally, in the context of all of this. And I often have to explain to people that the impact of porn as standalone sex education can be much more fundamental and insidious and ingrained in many ways that people don't think about. So when I talk about Make Love Not Porn, people's minds tend to go to sex acts, for example. But to give you just one specific example of what I encounter that motivated me to do what I'm doing with Make Love Not Porn. And by the way, what I'm addressing is, as I think we've made clear on this panel, I'm addressing mainstream porn. I'm addressing the kind of thing that is 1 or 2 clicks away on new porn. So 99.9% of all mainstream porn is made by men for men. Therefore, the entire raison d'etre, the be-all and end-all of every single mainstream porn sex scene is to get a man off. As a result, we now have an entire generation of guys and girls growing up believing that the entire raison d'etre, the be-all and end-all of sex, is to get a man off.
Absolutely.
So I'm 52, okay? I'm old enough to remember back in the day when, for the men I slept with, it was enormously important that I came. That I came first, that I came at least once, if not several times. If I had not come, the session was a complete failure and nobody was going anywhere till I came. These days, I don't come, and it's not even remarked upon. And by the way, I'm extremely selective about whom I date, and I only date utterly lovely younger men. And the reason it's not even remarked upon is because they have grown up being taught by porn, and it doesn't even occur to them. They have no idea that they should even be pursuing a woman's pleasure. They have no idea what that looks like, what's really, you do not learn how to go down on a woman by watching mainstream porn.
It's funny that I remember when I first started, the average scene would be oral sex on the girl, oral sex on the guy, penetration. Right? Then all of a sudden one day there was no more like giving head to the girl, it was just blowjob penetration. And what I came to realize when I started producing was that often when you have younger women who are not as familiar with their bodies, they may not, they may be enjoying it, or if they're new to performing, they may be new to it and not be able to convey the physical pleasure that they're having for the camera. So a lot of directors just cut it out because now we're shooting an extra 15 minutes of footage that we're not going to use anyway. And because when you have people that are used to having sex at home, especially if they're 18, 19 years old and they're coming from a place where they were sneaking to have sex in their bedroom and they were having sex in another, in a party or something where other people were around and they were trying to be quiet or whatever the case is, it's hard to break them from that so that they can actually make noise. And even the best performers, sometimes they get so wrapped up in their head and what they're doing that telling them, okay, you can make noise, it's okay. Like that's a big deal. And we have to get back to not just shooting for time, but shooting for pleasure and telling people, it's okay, I need you to make more noise. And most of the directors that I've worked with, when I'm working with someone that is newer, that doesn't know how to perform and only knows how to have sex, will tell them, I need you to be more vocal. I know you're enjoying it, but I need you to be more vocal. The camera has to pick it up.
Can I just say that I love sex. I've been having it for quite some time, and I've never had a problem getting off, and I like to do all kinds of crazy things, and I have a really and I also love performing, and I'm a huge attention whore and a huge exhibitionist, and I have a really hard time coming on camera. It's really difficult. I don't have a problem like externalizing my internal experience and like putting on a good show, but when it comes to that actual sexual response, I find it really difficult, and so I just wanted to say that to express my own personal experience as a porn performer, but also to say that another thing that I think that we need is just to encourage people who are really talented, not only at performing, not only at sex, but at performing sex, not in the sense that you were talking about, like fake, like putting on like a fake show, but like really like knowing how to like perform sex on camera. It's a specific kind of talent, and like encouraging that talent, I think, is another way that people are going to be able to see authentic pleasure from the people who are capable of portraying it.
And booking people to do things that they want to do, not just because they would look good on this box cover or they're going to sell a certain number of tapes, but filming people doing things that they are great at and that they enjoy. With people that they want to perform with, exactly.
Okay, all right, we need to wrap up. So I want to say one thing. Somewhere on one of the videos that is playing in this show, normally when it's not night, I have footage of Madison having a real orgasm. So you should all come back, watch all the videos.
Might be more than one.
Because
has great orgasms.
if anyone is wondering what it looks like,
You have really great non-orgasms. Which orgasms don't always have to be the goal. You can have some fucking killer
audience has any questions for any of the panelists. Okay, we're nice. We're nice.
That's okay, you can ask questions. He raised his hand, I saw it. Yes?
Can't put it down.
Okay, earlier on, you were discussing the fact of how you thought it was important for actors to engage in social media to show a more human side to their consumers. Do you feel at all that there might be some sort of like risk in overexposing their regular lives to their customer base? That they're already sharing such intimate moments with them, you might.
I think that it's important, and I think there is a risk of oversharing. I'm definitely an oversharer, and I talk about like everything, but I think most people are definitely very savvy. A lot of performers that I know, like they may not necessarily go on Formspring and post where they were until after they've left. Especially once you've had a couple of stalkers or two, like you get pretty, aware of that sort of thing. But I think it's really, really super important, especially in this day and age where selling to your market base is so difficult. That social media has become a soft sell, not just for porn, but for mainstream as well. You see a lot of celebrities that social media has become a part of their regular lives because you want people to become invested in who you are. We live in a tabloid times where where fans are already invested. They already want to know. They want to know everything you're doing, every move you make, what you're wearing, who you're sleeping with. And one of the ways mainstream media is now controlling tabloid media is by having the actors and actresses and singers that we're in love with to get more involved in social media. For us as porn performers, it has become essential in getting people to spend money on whatever product you have to sell them by getting them personally invested in your life. So if I tell my fans that, like today, I was without my phone all day, I had people like offering to buy me new phones. So, in which I don't need them to buy me a new phone, but what I do need them to do is log on to my phone sex line when I turn it on, and instead of me just I'm not going to sell them video, spam them with my site, spam them with my phone sex line, spam them with whatever. I'm going to talk about who I am as an individual, get them invested in who I am so that when I get ready to sell them something, they'll fucking spend money. It's the new marketing. It's the new porn marketing.
Can you get your fans to buy me a new phone?
I have one of my best friends is a DJ, and he was like, "Can you put me a mixer on your Amazon wish list?" I was like, "Yeah."
More grassroots level. I do a lot of touring of teaching. I'm a sex educator, so I go to Minneapolis, to Wisconsin, to Chicago. I'm all over the country and educating people around sex and talking about feminism and submission and feminism and pornography. And having that one-on-one contact with my fans who are buying memberships and buying DVDs, and the stores then reorder and buy new DVDs from me as well. So that's like fills in with my mission, and it is also really nice to see these new brick and mortars showing up that are very different from the brick and mortars. I remember I was very scared about going in when I was 18. Instead, they've become more sex education havens, even in the Midwest, which has been really wonderful to see springing up.
I hear like sort of a conflict that I don't know if I can formulate this question, but Cindy talks about her side and the problem that she runs into with these younger men, and the fantasy that you all talk about is as central to pornography, and education, which is to some degree about facts and truth, right? So if pornography is about fantasy and pleasure, and sexuality is about things that are sometimes not pleasurable and not pretty and not nice, and you know what I mean. And I'm wondering how you square that circle. I mean, how you if you know what I mean. I mean.
Yeah,
when the lady here is, Matt is talking about, feminism is about choice and sexuality is about choice, and then then it enters into where people get off on not having a choice. You know what I mean?
No, you have no
And
choice
so-
in submitting.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Negotiating.
I understand what you're saying. But I think I'm trying, and I don't know how to formulate the question, but I'm trying to get to that sense of there's a conflict. I hear a
I hear the sort of the categorical conflict that you're finding between if porn is about fantasy and we're also saying that porn can be about education. I mean, I think that it's true that porn, an important element of porn is entertainment. And that not all porn, it's not the responsibility of all porn to be educational, but what we're getting at in general here is not so much educating people with porn about facts, and yes, sometimes the facts. I mean, I don't know that many people who are interested in watching getting off on like bad sex in porn, but that I do believe in the power of leading by example and setting positive examples of pleasure and that kind of thing that we've been talking about. So in that way, the fantasy can be educational in the sense that people are seeing people modeling the kind of behavior that can produce sexual health and a healthy sexual appetites and identities in relationships.
And I think a big part of what we're talking about is not that the fantasy itself is educational, but we're educating people about the existence of the fantasy.
Yeah.
You know, and there doesn't exist any, like, that's where Make Love Not Porn comes in, is that like, people aren't learning about sex from their gym teachers or their parents because you don't want to learn about sex from your gym teachers and your parents. So the only reasonable conclusion is that there has to be some kind of huge shift in just the way that we talk about it collectively.
Yeah, I just like this idea of learning about sex and porn. This is not something new. This is an age-old kind of thing. I did an exhibition. It's called Stag, Smokers, and Blue Movies: Origin of Pornographic Film, and we interviewed these older gentlemen about their experiences watching a stag, what this was like. You watched it with 30 of your best friends. Like, it's projected on a wall. It's completely illegal. And this one man, we had the loop in the exhibition, talked about his experience. You always, in all of these films, men always kept their socks on. I don't know why. They always kept their socks on.
Yes, that's true.
You know what the reason is why people would watch, would be, is why guys would have their socks on? It's for leverage. And it's to keep if you're on
Do you know Bose?
Bose, yeah,
He
always.
wears Air Force Ones.
And then Mr. Marcus always has his boots on or sneakers on. But it's for leverage. It's to give them traction, because when they're in a particular position and sometimes they need the traction.
Thank you for answering my question. Yes, but the reason I bring it up is, now you've answered it, like, now I can propel this information.
Right.
I really appreciate that. But it's the fact that,
Nobody knew why.
the first time he has sex, it's with his wife, like, different time period. And like, after a little while, she has to explain to him, you don't actually need to wear the socks for sex. And he didn't know that. And that, he thought sex, socks, done deal. And so I think,
This is how fetishes are porn.
And so people have always learned about what sex is supposed to be from pornography.
Right.
Pornography itself has changed. I mean, you can see a vast, you're talking about how the scenes, one point it would be like, this would be the progression, now this is the progression.
Right.
I've heard from many people, have been other panels that have been on, okay, you have this intergenerational, like, this is how you have sex now. It doesn't necessarily involve these other components. So you have, I think there's a multiplicity of things. So yes, people are learning about it. Maybe they don't have other opportunities to learn. Maybe the other spaces are not learning. But, there's so many different, I guess, and that's what your question is, that there's so many different nuances, there's so many different issues, there's so many different contentions.
Which, I mean, what I guess I was trying to get is that life, sexuality is life, you know what I mean? There's so many facets to it, and so many ways of getting off, and so many, trying to fit the porn into the thing that, sounds very complicated.
But it really isn't, because honestly, if you are into girls with purple nail polish popping balloons, you can find girls with purple nail polish popping balloons online, so so you can get off. So it seems like it's more, I mean, the educating part, educating people how these things work and how you can incorporate these fetishes into your own personal sexual play.
Or not.
That might, or not, but that might be the more complicated factor, but the material is out there. The material is out there. I think what you're asking is, how do you educate people when there are so many different facets of sexuality to educate them on? It's a matter of outreach. And it's a matter of making the education available if people want to learn something outside of the movies and the films that they're watching.
And they have to want it.
And they have to want
They
it.
have to want it, because people come to the museum and, you know, we can't cover every single topic on sex and sexuality from the dawn of time in every particular culture and this, and, you know, and they want to see all of it, and then they'll be like, I can see this on the internet. It's like, but that's not the educational experience. No one's explaining to you the context, the history of that scene that you saw. And so you have to want it, and then there have to be the people to provide the education.
Yeah, I mean, I got an email from a girl a couple of weeks ago to my Make Love Not Porn inbox, and the headline was, I want to make love not porn, I don't know how. She said, I'm 23, I began watching porn when I was 11 or 12, I watched it for years before I even really knew what sex was. My entire sex life is inextricable from porn. I really want to do what you talk about on your website, I don't know how, please help. To which I said, Make Love Not Porn on TV end of June. We'll actually
I do think in a lot of ways the best answer that maybe we can all give is talk about it.
Yeah.
Just talk
About it and know that sex is not one thing. It's not one thing that you just find online. That, I mean, sex
is a practice.
and pleasuring one another, connecting with another person or many people does not have to be one thing.
And it goes back to giving people permission to express their desire. You know, my partner and I had yesterday, he works 12 hours in a restaurant every day, and he called me, or he texted me last night and said, I think I just really want some head. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, it's been a while since you've given me head, so I tell you what, I'll trade you. and he texted me back, really? I was like, yeah. But it was a negotiation at that point. And I'm an expert negotiator at getting what I want. But we have to teach people how to become expert negotiators and telling people that it's okay to express desire. And it's okay to express, like sex doesn't have to always be, we're gonna have sex for 2 hours and it's gonna be, amazing, and there's gonna be fireworks and it's gonna be beautiful. Sex can be, okay, can you give me head and I'll get you off and it'll be great. Or I'll give you head and you can owe me one next time.
Or spanking in the kitchen while the kid's taking a nap.
Yeah, any of the things, it can be anything that you want it to be, but we have to teach people that it's okay to negotiate their wants and their needs with their partner.
Or you can do, or right over here, you can, or in most occasions and everything else, you can do a little role play. It's just as well too.
Right.
Because it is important for for the lives of people these nowadays that love that would love to be able to do that would love to do some role playing action. So that that way that they can be able to get themselves off is just as well too.
Yeah. I think porn is just a conduit to be able to get people to think about their fantasies and think about their own personal desire. It's not an educational tool. It's being used as education, but it's not an educational tool. Like, I think it's a way to open the door, so to get people to walk through, and then somehow, some way they have to be educated after the fact. So.
Perfect. Before we wrap up, and thank you very much.